Thank you for joining us. I'm Marni Hughes, and this is Missing on NewsNation. Each week, we cover a missing person case from across the country, no matter their race, religion, background, or circumstances. Every missing person matters, has a family, friends, and even sometimes complete strangers looking for them. That is where we believe you come in. By watching and sharing each and every one of these cases we cover, our hope is that we can together find answers and offer some closure. This week, our featured case starts in Maryland. A young man named Braonain McGinnis leaves home days before Christmas. 2 weeks later and 2,000 miles away, Brennan's car is found in the Arizona desert. It's a peculiar case, and in a moment, I'm going to be joined by Law Olmstead, the president of the Missing Persons Center, to talk more about Brennan's disappearance. First, though, a few other cases that we are following for you this week. A $50,000 reward is now being offered in the search for Sebastian Rogers. The 15-year-old vanished 6 months ago from his home in Hendersonville, Tennessee. The new reward in the case coming from the FBI. Despite multiple searches of the area, there has been no sign of Sebastian. According to his family and police, Sebastian has multiple medical conditions and is on the autism spectrum, which could make it hard for him to return home safely. The husband of Mamta Kafel-Bott is now facing charges in her disappearance. Mamta is a 28-year-old mother from Virginia who vanished in late July. Police arrested Naresh Bott at the family's home, and he is now being charged with concealment of a dead body. Mamta is a nurse and a mother, and prosecutors say the suspect had a history of abusing the victim and had made Google searches on his laptop regarding the death of a spouse. We also have a sad update on another missing case that we have been following for several years. Police in Michigan have recovered the remains of Dee Warner. The remains were found in an empty tank meant for anhydrous ammonia on her husband's property. The mother of 5 disappeared in 2021. Her husband was charged in November with murder and tampering with evidence. He has pleaded not guilty. Dale Warner is set to appear in court this month. Now to this week's featured case. A family in Maryland is desperate to find their son and brother. Braonain McGinnis skipped work just before Christmas in 2023. His abandoned car was then discovered thousands of miles away in the Arizona desert. His family and friends are asking for help. How could he have just vanished? Police are telling us at this point in the investigation, all options are on the table.
He loved playing guitar. He practiced playing guitar every day. I really miss hearing him play.
Braonain McGinnis left home in Maryland a few days before Christmas and hasn't been seen since.
The week before he left, we were making little miniature Christmas trees using pipe cleaners. He was all smiles and talking to us. Because like I said, he's kind of quiet. Everything seemed perfect and normal, like nothing was wrong. And then a week later, he doesn't come home and he's gone.
Brennan was due in for his shift at food distributor Sysco in Maryland on the night of December 21st, but he never showed up. Instead,
he went to the grocery store to pick up a prescription. He went to Chick-fil-A to grab something to eat. He went to the bank and withdrew cash, and it wasn't a lot. It was only $200 that he took out.
his mom, Patricia, said Brennan had battled with depression for most of his young adult life, but added that he'd been at a maintenance level for the last several years. His friend, Lucas, who he played video games with, said he didn't notice anything unusual about Brennan before he left.
Everything seemed normal. It was green talk. It was the basic every day. Hey, how you doing? You want to play some games? And it was just normal. He seemed like himself. He was happy, doing his basic stuff, listening to music, playing games, chatting. Nothing was out of the ordinary.
Patricia didn't realize Brennan was missing until the next day because she thought he was at work. Now, when she looks back at the places he stopped before he left town, she wonders if he ever planned on coming back.
He went to a couple of locations in our town. My personal opinion is that it holds good memories and nostalgia for him. And to me, when I look back on it, it just feels like having a last look.
Brennan's phone either went dead or was turned off the night he left. Since then, there's been no activity on his bank cards or credit cards. From there, Brennan's car, a red Hyundai Accent sedan, was tagged in several states heading west. Friends think he may have been at the Grand Canyon in late December.
Inside the vehicle, there were visitor maps that you would only get when you go through like one of the entrance stations or one of the visitor centers. So we believe that there's a good chance that he visited the south rim of the Grand Canyon because those visitor maps were in the vehicle.
The car was found 2,000 miles from home January 3rd, abandoned on scenic Route 89A in Page, Arizona. It had just 15 miles worth of gas left in the tank.
The Arizona troopers said that when they located the vehicle, there was no license plate on the back. So it appeared that Brennan had removed the license plate. There was a note left in the car. It's not a suicide note or anything. The note essentially was gifting the car to whoever found it. It was like, whoever finds this car, take good care of it. It's a good car. It's reliable.
Patricia looks back on recent family trips to Disney World and Tennessee and wonders how this could have happened.
Did he just cut and run and hitchhike out? Did he just walk out into the desert? I can't even begin to imagine like what was going through his head at that point.
It is a curious case, and we've got to focus on the timeline to try to find answers. Joining me now, Law Olmstead, president of the Missing Persons Center. Law, one thing I appreciate about you is you focus on the facts. And I think as we look at this timeline, I know you want to pay special attention to the last known whereabouts of Brennan, which takes us all the way back to Maryland, his home where his family and friends are. And he ate at this Chick-fil-A and then didn't show up to work. Why is it important that we start asking questions about that?
Well, because ultimately when the vehicle is found in Arizona and there's no evidence that he planned on taking a trip to Arizona, that's where it starts. Why was the car discovered or located in Arizona, but there's no evidence of him preparing for a trip? If all he did was take out $200 cash from an ATM, that would not nearly be enough to take care of just the fuel costs getting to Arizona. It would be far more than that, let alone maybe stopping at a motel or something like that, stopping for food with no activities on any kind of, debit card or anything like that, and the phone being turned off. I have a feeling that if he did take this trip, in fact, that he may have been accompanied by someone else who paid for these things. But again, we mentioned this note that was found in the vehicle not being a suicide note. It's a very curious note. And I'd like to know, what's been done to verify the handwriting to be sure it was his. Because if it wasn't his, then we got to roll all the way back to Maryland again and try to find out where he is in Maryland. He may never have made that trip. Somebody may have stolen his vehicle from him from behind the Marley Station Mall. So there's so many things to consider here. This is one of the wildest cases I've seen in the last few years, for sure.
And based on what we know publicly from police in the investigation, even what the family is saying, foul play does not seem as though it's a high factor here of suspicion. Given that, would they not be investigating forensics? Would they look at the car or perhaps that Chick-fil-A to look at any evidence of a crime that may have happened?
I think foul play needs to be mostly considered, because none of the other details make any sense. I think it's kind of easy and convenient for law enforcement to do two things: is kind of say someone is voluntarily missing, and another one is that it is possibly a case of potential self-harm. That kind of takes them off the hook a little bit. If I were assigned this case as an investigator in law enforcement, I would first do the best I could to rule out foul play, because it just seems obvious something happened here. None of this is fitting together. And we need to start with his inner circle, his friends, some family members, but people that he associated with on a daily basis. There's too many questions surrounding around Maryland for sure. So foul play to me is a 60% chance still at this time.
Right. And law enforcement being open about any possible scenario is still on the table, but it's been coming up on a year this Christmas. And our audience has picked up on this case very quickly, Law. In fact, we've gotten a lot of attention and hits on social media and on our website, and a few viewer questions that seem to be aligned with what you're saying here. I've got one from Ashley in Texas, and she says, what about his gamer profile? So we know Brennan liked to play video games. He had kind of a close circle, tight-knit group that played video games. How might that play into investigative clues here and looking back at his history in gaming?
Well, it'd be another thing just to track, when was his last login? How many different platforms did he have subscriptions to? And what were the conversations with people on those platforms leading up to this as well? So all communications from any platform, any devices is very, very important, super significant.
I want to go back to that soundbite that we have from Brennan's mom, and she's talking about the car and the location. So found in Page, Arizona, in the middle of the Arizona desert, about 2,000 miles away from Brennan's home. Here's Brennan's mom, Patricia.
The Arizona troopers said that when they located the vehicle, there was no license plate on the back. So it appeared that Brennan had removed the license plate. There was a note left in the car. It's not a suicide note or anything. The note essentially was gifting the car to whoever found it. It was like, whoever finds this car, take good care of it. It's a good car. It's reliable.
So police then find this car, and now we have a soundbite from Aaron Dick, the search and research coordinator. This is with the Coconino County Sheriff's Office. I want to play what his response to was with finding the car.
He could have as easily have just parked the vehicle there because it was nearly out of fuel and gotten taken a ride from somebody else and gone somewhere not even in the area. Or he could have walked away from that vehicle into the forest at that location. We just haven't determined we haven't developed any clues that kind of lead us any direction.
So, Law, these are all theories, right? We can only go based on the evidence they have so far. But what stands out to you about the circumstances of the car found in the desert?
Two things. One, the vehicle is on the side of a road, an interstate, I believe, with 15 miles of gas. If I'm him or anyone else driving this vehicle, I'm driving it till there's 0 miles of gas in the hopes I can find a gas station. Then from there's a note. Gifting, we'll say, the vehicle to someone else. What very sensitive move, very kind thing to do, but it makes no sense. It just makes no sense. So the biggest thing for me is the car really didn't run out of gas. It was low on fuel. It didn't run out of gas. And now law enforcement is making guesses. Well, he could have walked away and this and that. No, that just doesn't seem right. If the car had 15 miles of gas in it, that means someone else was informed, hey, my car has only got 15 miles of gas. Come meet us here on the interstate and pick us up. That's what it shows me. That car wasn't just abandoned there. But there was some reason those plates were taken off, which doesn't make any sense. I can't even try to come up with any kind of a sensible reason why the plates were removed, unless it was stolen from him at some point.
Well, and then I start to question, what did that scene look like around the car? Were there footprints? Which direction did they go? Was there any other evidence left behind? Fingerprints on the car that don't match anyone in his close circle. We got another viewer question from Nancy in North Carolina who's been following this case, and she wants to know about the phone records. Investigatively, how hard is it for a family like Brennan's to find out who his last phone calls were, where his phone last pinged?
It shouldn't be very difficult. They've just got to contact the phone carriers to get permission based on the circumstances. However, it shouldn't be the responsibility of the family to recover this information. This should be part of a forensic analysis that law enforcement should be anxious to do and provide them some sort of details of what they're finding so they can kind of put some pieces together. It's clear to me that it hasn't been done.
Back to the car in the Arizona desert. I mean, there are a handful of cases, Law, that I can recall that we have covered that have led us to a mystery in the desert where people simply go missing. Kenny from Iowa City is asking about the reservations in that area, a place that authorities would likely be asking some questions, just if anybody saw him.
You know what? When I was doing some research on this and looking at maps where the vehicle was located, there's a lot of tribal reservations in that area. And I believe, isn't his name somehow Indian or Native?
I'd have to circle back on that. Not sure.
Yeah, it might be. So maybe he has some, desire to be part of the Indian community or something and was headed that way. But again, I don't feel that way. I feel that this vehicle was taken from him at some point and someone staged this note because, again, it doesn't make sense. And then they were heading back somewhere towards some sort of reservation or something. But again, these are really tough things to try to figure out. But yes, there is a large Indian presence in that area specifically.
Yeah, I agree with you. The details don't add up. So you work with a lot of families on missing cases in the work that you do each day, and we appreciate partnering with you as we investigate these cases as well. What is the advice that you would give to a family in these circumstances where it just seems like the dots are hard to connect and there are a lot of theories out there as their best course of action to put pressure on law enforcement to do more?
Well, not every family is financially capable of hiring a private investigator, a qualified private investigator to handle the case. But that would be my advice, is law enforcement, there's great people in law enforcement who are very much driven by, solving mysteries. But there's also a lot of them that are overwhelmed and just simply don't even have the skill set. A private investigator who specializes in missing persons cases can help them develop the information they need to potentially solve this case. I believe this is a solvable case, but it's going to be done through private resources and not public.
Another thing, Law, that we run into in a lot of cases, if there is a history of mental illness, or in Brennan's case, his mom is forthcoming that he had struggled with depression, but he was maintaining it. How does that factor into the police response and the investigation and even the public's interest in a missing case?
Well, the police response to that is going to be very limited. That's going to give them kind of an out. We'll say they're not going to do a whole lot, and they're going to wait for, unfortunately, maybe a body to be discovered. As far as the public goes, it's a mystery because a lot of people do suffer from depression and self-harm ideology. So there's a lot of people compassionate who want to see him found, just like all of us do. We want to see him found. So that does sympathize with the community and helps a lot more people get involved in the search. I can already see there's been a lot of community search efforts on this, but they're still not finding him.
And the public is powerful. I think that's part of what we appreciate most in our Missing series is partnering with the public. They see these stories, they share them. How important of a tool are they in a case like this with so few answers?
They're huge because, manpower we'll say within law enforcement is very limited. It's always going to be limited. However, community efforts are unlimited. You can get thousands and thousands of people to a location over time. And there's been many cases where, volunteers and just general people who have no association to anything, just are curious and they get drones out and different things and start looking. That is so powerful. And it does make a huge difference. There's so many times you find where you hear about even just hikers finding the remains of somebody who had gone missing, even in areas where law enforcement had done supposedly very comprehensive searches and found nothing. So the community part, getting this information out there, like you guys at NewsNation do the best job of anybody I've ever worked with in any era, basically, of getting the word out and covering these cases. So because you're covering this, there should be a lot of people willing to help out, spread the word, and even get out there and do some searching. It doesn't hurt.
Right. And we're coming up on a year. So how much greater of a challenge does it become to get answers the more time passes? Incredibly difficult because there was really nothing left behind after he was last seen on the 21st.
So it's going to become very, very difficult. But I have to keep re-emphasizing this. Activities and things that have happened before the person went missing are equally or more significant than what happened afterwards. And I don't feel enough attention is being paid to the 30 days or so before he disappeared.
You bring up a lot of important points and raise a lot of really key questions. So, Law, I appreciate you joining us on this case. We'll continue to follow it. I know you're invested in it as well. And to all of you at home who have continued to watch, share this story in the hopes that we can help push this investigation forward and get answers for this family. Law Olmstead from the Missing Persons Center, as always, your perspective is so greatly appreciated. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
In the meantime, if you know anything, you can help in the search for Brennan McGinnis, help his family and his friends bring him home safely. You can contact the Coconino County Sheriff's Office. The number is on your screen, 928-774-4523. Next time in our missing series, Misha Mabalina Koshalani Johnson. Misha is a young mother from Hawaii. Her family now says her case has gone from missing to murdered, the latest on her disappearance and an arrest in that case. And if there's a missing person case you think that we should know about, send it to us at newsnationnow.com/missing. You can also send us your tips through our NewsNation app. As always, we appreciate you partnering with us on every single one of these cases. It matters, we notice, and we're hoping together we can solve these cases and bring answers to these families. Thank you for joining us. I'm Marni Hughes. I'll see you back here next week for our latest missing case.